Robert Garza says his ex-wife used false accusations to keep their children away from him. Then in March this year, he testified in front of the Texas Senate as a dad and as a parental rights advocate.
It should not cost, in Texas, a fit, willing, and able parent $700,000, 12 years in court, and over 43 false CPS allegations. I could have been jailed or imprisoned at any point.
This Texas law by Senator Angela Paxton will give non-custodial parents back lost time with their children, the same amount of time wrongfully taken away in divorce court orders.
Interference with child custody has been and always will be illegal. Violating a court order has been and always will be illegal. What this bill really accomplishes is closing the loopholes that allow habitual offenders that continually withhold children from the other parent with no accountability. This bill will not affect me, but it will affect the children and parents being hurt after me. I promised my family that once I got out of court a year and a half ago, that I was going to do something to change the system so no other children and families have to experience what mine did.
Hi, Robert, and welcome back to the Anti-Alienation Project. And
Thanks.
a big congratulations also on passing your 3 strikes law unanimously in Texas just last week, right?
Yeah, just 2 days ago. But it passed unanimously out of the Senate committee, so it still has to go through the House and the Senate, but I don't think there's going to be any pushback.
So you are actually the first person to be interviewed back on the Anti-Alienation Project a second time. So I'm really excited for this because the last time we spoke more about your personal story. You can go watch that if you'd like. I'll put a little link up here. But today we're really going to dive more deeply into your bills and how other people could become involved. We do have the shared experience of experiencing parental alienation, me from the child's point of view, and then Robert, you from the father's point of view. So before we really dive deep into your bills, do you think that you could give a synopsis of your experience and how it led you to the front lines of family law reform?
Yeah, so I went through family court for about 15 years. I was just a parent, just like everyone else. I experienced parental alienation, gatekeeping, and it's been about $700,000 just being able to be a parent in my children's life. Went through 43 plus false allegations. They were all ruled out. They were all done by proxy, and ended up learning family law, civil law, constitutional law, and criminal law because of everything combined. I'm pro se now and ended up figuring out where the loopholes were in the judicial system, and now closing all those with a lot of legislation here in Texas and then now on a national level.
Amazing. So you've really been through it, and what I really admire is that your story is heartbreaking, but it's remarkable that you channeled all that pain and energy into real policy work. And since the last time that I spoke to you, which had to have been over a year ago, I think, you've really made some big strides. A lot of progress has happened. So let's just get right into it. I want to talk about the bills you're working on, what they are, why they matter, and how they work. So if you don't mind, can we start with the 3 strikes law?
Yeah.
Imagine we're talking to somebody who has no idea about any of these laws. So what is the 3 strikes law, and how would it protect parents from repeated custodial interference?
Sure. So the only way that you can pretty much, well, there's a court order telling you what kind of custody that somebody has. Everyone has one, or most people do. When you have that, the only 2 ways to alienate a child is to take that parental time away. And to do that, there's false allegations with a protective order, restraining order, and my time taken, time back bill fixes that in Texas, and now it's now in North Dakota and some other ones. The other way to do it is interfering with your child custody. So when you call a cop, they come out, they say it's a civil matter. It's not a civil matter. It's a criminal matter in all 50 states. It's just that they don't prosecute for it because when you make a police report, it goes to a detective in the youth division, then they find probable cause, and then it goes to a DA, and then the DA gives it to a grand jury. That's where the problem lies. So the grand jury can ask questions, and when they ask the DA, how many times has this happened or why did the parent withhold, they don't know. And so my 3 strikes law takes that state jail felony, what it is today, and makes it 2 misdemeanors before a state jail felony. And what it does is it gives the grand jury and the DA a pattern of bad behavior before they issue that state jail felony. The really good part about it is if they're withholding for a good reason, like let's just say there's abuse on either side, doesn't matter. And if one parent is withholding, this actually gives a $500 fine the first time, the second time, and then the third time it becomes a state jail felony. Now, the good part about this is that it's the policeman giving that ticket, so it's just a criminal matter. So you take it to criminal court instead of family court, where there is no due process. So when you take it to a criminal judge, they're like, okay, you withheld the child. Why did you do it? And they're like, oh, well, there's abuse. Okay, so did you take them to CPS? Did you take them to a hospital? Did you get something done? No, I just kept them at home. Boom, $500 fine sticks, pay it, don't do it again. But if there's a real reason that you're withholding, yes, I took them to CPS, I did this, judge, and judge is like, okay, dismissed. So at this point, there is due process, and in criminal court there is, but family court there's not. The sad part about family court, when you go that route, it takes months to get in there, and even if you do, if they withheld for 2 months, and it finally took you 2 months to get a court date, then you're spending $3,000 to $5,000 doing an enforcement issue, and months. By that time, they can alienate the child or brainwash or anything else. This way, it gets handled immediately. Either way, whether there is abuse, not abuse, but it gets handled very quickly.
Wow, I love that because a huge thing that I noticed right off the bat with family court is you're not innocent until proven guilty. And
Correct.
yeah. So does this change what happens when a parent calls the police to report custodial interference? At that juncture, what does the law change?
So I'm amending a penal code, which that's what the
Okay.
police go by. There's family codes. This this does nothing with the court. You can still go into court and file for an enforcement, even if you file or use this law. So they can run parallel to each other. If you go the family court route, it's a civil matter. If you go the criminal route, it's a criminal matter.
Okay.
And so it's the only tool that a policeman has when he comes out to combat interference with child custody.
You said that this law is about accountability. Can you walk us through the types of violations it addresses and what happens specifically after each strike?
Yes. So let's just say someone withholds,
Mhm.
and usually they withhold. And this is the sad part about it is that, when someone's doing this just on purpose, they do it right before a holiday, and I call it holiday hijacking.
Mhm.
So it's right before Christmas, New Year's, stuff like that, or spring break. You can kind of tell if they're doing it right before then. I mean, they've had the child for 10 days prior to your visitation. So why didn't you take them to a doctor or something else before then, right? So it's common sense stuff now. And because of what you're doing and bringing the awareness out and all the other advocates, it's actually teaching the system where the flaws are
Mhm.
and how to combat it.
What specifically happens for each strike? You mentioned a
Oh, yes.
$500
Yep.
fine.
Yep. So when the cop comes out and it's your period of possession, let's just say you have first, third, and fifth weekends. So he comes out that Friday, you call mom or dad's withholding the children, and the cop's like, okay, are you going to hand them over? And if you say no, or if that person says no, he's going to say, okay, here's a $500 fine. Done. And they leave. Nobody's fighting, exchanging, whatever. And so then that parent, it shifts the burden of proof. So now that, let's just say the protective parent or that withholding parent, whichever they're doing, whichever side they want to argue
Yeah.
about. So when that parent's withholding that child, now they have to take the day off, go to court and argue that why they were withholding. It shifts the burden of proof because the other way, what it is now is that when they withhold, now the parent that is entitled to that possession has to go to court, go get a lawyer, pay $3,000 to $5,000.
Mhm.
Now it gets done right there as soon as the cop gets there, $500 fine, they don't want to hand them over. So then they have first, third, and fifth. So then the second time they withhold, then it's another $500 fine. Now they've had almost 2 weeks to go take care of whatever this is in front of a criminal court judge to say, hey, this is why I'm withholding. That's why it's so good for people that are in domestic abuse
Mhm.
situations. Now, the third time, their withholding, then it's the state jail felony. And they keep track of it like a speeding ticket. That's basically what it is. A speeding ticket is a misdemeanor. So withholding will be a misdemeanor 2 times, but the third time it's bad behavior and you will get arrested.
Wow, excellent. Some people out there might think it's drastic, but when it comes to a parent-child relationship, I don't think it's drastic at all. I love that. I think that's great. And it also gives people, like you said, who are actually experiencing domestic violence an opportunity to show proof and evidence and to really protect their children. One thing that comes to mind for me is the case scenario where the parent has had such mind control, the alienating parent has had such control over the child's mind. They make the child believe that it's their own decision to do the rejecting. Where does that come into play? Say, for example, a cop comes to the house. I'm just imagining my own little 9-year-old self. If the cop would have come to the house, I would have insisted, no, my dad's bad. I don't want to go with him. So and so. I was made to believe certain lies and things, stories about him. How does that play into this?
When the child's not going, that's not good. It's like school. If the child has to go to school, are you because the child doesn't want to go to school, are you not going to make them? You're not a good parent at that point because the child has to get an education. Same thing, the child has to have a relationship with both. If there's a real reason, then absolutely don't do it. Kind of like if the child's sick, you don't make them go to school, but you go to the doctor, you get some things figured out, but you can't just withhold. And if a parent is giving the child that responsibility to be able to choose, it's really not because at that point, if you're an alienating parent, that child is not going to choose the other parent because they have repercussions from your own home. So you should never give a child, if there's no issues at either home, you should never give a child, that choice. You have to go to school, send the child. You have a court order, it needs to be followed. I have a saying that says, when an alienator lets a child choose whether to visit the other parent's home, it's not a true choice. Instead, the child is forced to decide, knowing they will face retaliation from the alienator if they choose to go.
I love that. So, in other words, with your bill, it doesn't take into account the child's opinion, for instance.
You should never put a child to give their opinion like that. If a child is not wanting to go, you go take care of it, kind of like a sick child goes to the doctor. If a child's not wanting to go, take them to a therapist or CPS or some other way to be able to combat whatever's going on or figure out what's going on.
Okay, great. I love that. So is there anything else you would like to talk about with the three strikes law? For example, if people are watching or they hear about this and they're fired up, I need this in my state. How can I get this passed in my state? For me, I would love to get this passed in Utah. So can you walk me through the steps that I
Sure.
would go through, for
Yeah.
instance?
Yeah. So most of the time, people can reach out to me on Facebook. You leave a comment on something that you saw, the three strikes laws on my Facebook page. And then I respond to pretty much like 99% of my stuff that people post, I'll respond to it. And if an advocate wants to be an advocate for the bill in your state, they can go to robertgarza.us and put your zip code in, and it'll pull up if there's any bills in your state right now of mine. And if there's not, it'll say if sign up to be an advocate. When you sign up to be an advocate, you pick on which bill you want, and then it sends me an alert, and I will amend the let's just say the three strikes law. I'll amend the three strikes law for your state and take your own code. At that point, you literally just have to take that, and it's very short. It's literally 1 page, if even that. And you take it to your state senator or your House rep. You say, look, here's a bill that I would like to pass, and here's the problem with it. And I actually even go into describing what the issue is, what this bill does. Then it has the bill and what it solves. So it's all gift wrapped. You literally hand it over, and a lot of legislators love it. Doesn't matter if they're which side of, whether they're Republican, Democrat, does not matter because this is a bipartisan issue. You're dealing with parents and children, and this solves a major issue for states on a major level.
I love that. So I'm going to do that. And I encourage other people watching, if you're interested, to also do that as well. Is the bill in the process of being passed in any other states right now?
Yes, it's going through. We have some senators and House reps saying that they're taking it in Colorado, Florida, Virginia. North Dakota just passed the other one that I had came out with in Texas. But I do have those same legislators saying that they want the three strikes law. In fact, they had put a committee together in the last bill about a month ago stating that they're going to research how much of an issue this is in their state, but they're definitely going to pass it next session. So there's several states. I think Ohio is going to put it through their legislators. There's several states that are doing it. After you take it to your state senator and your House rep, you're not alone. You notify me, and all you have to do is, and you don't even have to take it to them. You can email it to them, but you have to do a couple of follow-up calls and say, hey, did you get this? Yes. Okay. I need a 20 to 30-minute Zoom call with the senator or the House rep or their staff. Even their staff is okay. And when that happens and we get on a call, you send me the link, you're their constituent. So you give them your story of why you need this bill. And
Mm.
then I'm there to tell them after you finish, say introducing yourself and telling them what the problems are. I'll talk to them about the bill. We just did this in Colorado. The constituent talked to them for about 10 minutes, gave them their story 10, 15 minutes. And then after the next 15 minutes, they took both bills, the three strikes and the time taken, time back for false allegations.
Okay, so you can introduce both of them at the same time to your senator, House rep, and
Oh yeah, for
okay.
sure.
So that's what I was going to get into next, the time taken, time back bill. But before we do, I just wanted to ask, have you received any criticism or pushback for the three strikes law?
No, not really. I had a group try to push back on it, but they were saying that it hurts protective parents, but it
Mhm.
doesn't. In fact, it protects protective parents because right now, if you withhold, it's a state jail felony. In fact, we went to go testify in Texas a couple of days ago. There was a dad that was on his way to a shelter taking his son, and the police pulled him over and arrested him for interference with child custody the first time
Mm.
because he was a couple of hours late taking the kid back and he was saying what he was doing. Well, when they called, they arrested him and now he has a state jail felony. That protective parent got a state jail felony right now because of what the law is. Now, with my law in place, he would have got a $500 fine and be able to protect his son. And so this is an issue. So I think that group that was talking about this really didn't understand the law that it actually protects protective parents.
Wow. So you covered both bases. That's
Mhm.
excellent. Yeah, I
Yep.
love that.
Now,
Um,
one other thing. So what the law does too, the three strikes law, it's still a state jail felony if you take the child out of state. I'm not amending that. At that point, you are trying to flee, whatever, but right now it's a state jail felony if you leave the child when it's someone else's time.
okay, that makes sense. So the first time you take out them out of state, it's a state jail felony.
Right. I'm only amending in state.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for clearing that up. So what inspired the other bill that you've created, the time taken, time back law, and how would that bill restore fairness to the parenting time equation?
I went through 43 plus false allegations, and they were all done by proxy. The mom never made one allegation herself. She always did it through mandatory reporters. And I didn't know that until after we went through the whole gamut, 15 years of court and stuff. But when I saw where the loophole was,
Mhm.
the big detriment was to wasting CPS resources because this bill gives those resources back to CPS because it discourages false allegations. So when somebody gets a protective order, restraining order, a false one, and when they do the investigation and CPS rules out the allegation, then when they return the child, they return the time. Before the bill had passed, the judge had discretion, but a lot of them didn't do it. They just said, "Oh, let's just move forward, no harm, no foul. Here's your kid." But there was months and it broke that parental bond. And so this bill repairs that parental bond that was taken by precaution by the court. So the courts aren't supposed to do it because they violate your Fifth Amendment right for due process, your 14th Amendment right for care, custody, and control. But if they're going to do that, the time taken, time back bill repairs that parental bond by giving you that time back. Now, what's happened is that people stop making false allegations because when you hijack someone's Christmas, then you're going to miss two Christmases in a row. You hijack their spring break, then you're going to miss two spring breaks in a row. It stops false allegations, but it will not stop a real allegation. It's a very pretty bill.
Does it have specifics on what type of evidence is required to uphold that restraining order? Or how do they determine if an allegation is false, in other words?
Yeah. So it's an investigative agency, CPS is. So when CPS rules it out and there was no uh, abuse or neglect found, then that's when you get your time back. But you have to go into court and dissolve that protective order, restraining order. But when you do, you at least you don't have to go back again for a second hearing to get that time back. When they return the child, they return the time. And it's the same type of time and the same amount of time. It's very specific in what I wrote. And it's pretty neat. I mean, if you look at it, it's only literally maybe a paragraph and a half.
Mhm.
But it's very specific and it's very powerful.
I love this. I'm thinking about my own story once again. It just happens to come up because this is exactly what my mom did, a false restraining order on my dad. And then, I couldn't see him for 60 days. And that is what really solidified the alienation. So if this bill had been in law,
Enacted.
if it enacted, then my dad could have potentially fought it and then they would have returned the custody and the time. So they take it and it's found to be a false allegation. So the protective order
Well,
is
it's found to be ruled out.
ruled out. Okay.
Yeah, so there was no abuse and no neglect found.
So then immediately the children are given to that parent for the amount of time, or how is that time allotted?
Well, you have to go to court to rule out the protective order, restraining order, to dissolve it.
Okay.
And when you do, that's when my law kicks in, is when they return the child, they return the time. Now, the same type of time. So let's just say your dad had every first, third, and fifth weekend.
Mhm.
And he took, like you said, 2 months of that time. So that means he had six possessions that he missed, and they were weekend possessions. So now when they return you, you go with your dad every first, second, third, fourth, fifth weekend, every first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So now your mom doesn't have any weekends. She still has during the week possession because she didn't hijack that. She hijacked the weekend possession. So it's not like, okay, you missed 60 days or 2 months with your dad. So now you go 2 months with your dad. That doesn't work like that. It's possession times.
Okay, great. Thank you for clearing that up. With the three strikes law, I love how, the penalty gets more drastic the more times that you withhold your child. So for this one, is it every time the protective order is found to be false, they get the time back, or does it escalate in the penalty at all for the amount of time?
No, no. So the three strikes law, so the time taken, time back law is a civil law. It deals with family court. The three strikes law is a criminal law and it deals with criminal behavior. And when you're
Okay.
and if you think about it, so like let's just say somebody doesn't pay their child support.
Mhm.
That order came from a family court. But because they're not doing what that court order says, then it becomes criminal. Kind of like a restraining order. If you go to family court and get a restraining order, protective order, if you violate that and show up at their house, you get arrested because it's criminal.
Mm,
So when you violate a court order, it becomes criminal.
okay. Well, those sound great. And I can see how both of those laws would work kind of in conjunction with each other too.
They do. So both of these laws in your state will solve like 90% of the problems that are going on with
Mhm.
even alienation. It stops where it starts. And the only way you can do it, even if you put it this way, even if you have 50-50 in your state and you have 50% possession, all they have to do is make a false allegation. And then your 50% possession goes to zero. When that happens, time taken, time back law comes into play. And so they're more likely not going to make that false allegation. So that protects the possession that you have. The other way that they take it is the interference with child custody. And if the three strikes law is there, then that stops that behavior. Both of these bills make sure that your parental bond is intact and you have the least amount of disruption in that schedule.
Yes, for sure. And it seems like this would also be, these laws are great deterrents for people who are considering withholding their child or making false allegations,
Yep.
which we didn't really have before this at all, I would say. So this is great work. I love it. Let's move a little bit, if you don't mind, and talk about the behind the scenes legislative process. So how do you get lawmakers to care about this issue when still so many misunderstand parental alienation?
Yeah, so I didn't really understand it until I went through it. And a lot of your people that are listening to this are probably going through it or don't know how to deal with it or don't know how to express it or talk about it. If you look at the first of this podcast, I said literally probably within 10 seconds what I went through. If you are talking more than 2 minutes about your case to a legislator, you're going to lose their attention. And so you have to figure out, I don't care if you throw it all in Chat GPT or some other program and throw up on it, and then just say, hey, I need a elevator pitch for what I just said. And it'll just spit it out real quick. That's what you need to understand. The legislator, I always tell people, do not go to legislators unless you have a solution. You can take any one of my 8 solutions and it will have solved 90% of whatever was your problem in family court. After 15 years, I ran the gamut and I understand what the problems are. And as long as you have the solution, you can take one of these laws to your legislators and they will submit it.
Have you experienced any resistance or misunderstanding from lawmakers or lobbyists?
A little bit, kind of like what I just cleared up for you, and that's why I cleared it up because they thought, like you just said, okay, if I miss 60 days with my dad, do I get 60 days with him?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's your possession times. And if you read legalese the way we wrote it, you understand it that way. But to a normal person, they won't understand it. I'm just used to seeing legal stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
But now that the normal person, like we're talking to right now, will read that and they'll think that they miss 60 days, so they get 60 days back. No, it's only possession times.
Okay.
But yeah, but that was the only pushback that I got from different things. They didn't understand legalese.
Yeah, that makes sense. We already talked about how someone listening can take the steps to support this movement. Are there any other ways that people can show up? Emails, testimony, or public comments?
Yeah. So there's all like when you sign up on my robertgarza.us to be an advocate, if there's bills going in your state, what I ended up doing in some of these states, there's maybe 10 advocates, let's just say in your state. Then I'll say, okay, Maddie, here's 10 people that signed up in your state. They all want to be advocates. You form a group, you lead them, or at least you stay in contact with them on passing these laws. Now, if you're in the middle of this and want to help, but understand that you can't because you're going through trauma right now. And if you're throwing up on people or throwing up on these legislators or stuff, they're not going to want to help you. So you're not helping the team or other people when you're doing these things. So just understand that, when you sign up for a thing or whatever, someone's going to contact you and when it comes in your state and it passes very quick and very easy. In Texas, the time taken, time back passed unanimous, bipartisan the first time, and the governor signed off on it. That is unheard of, but it's a God thing. And I think that it's going to go in all states, and this protects your parenting time.
Yeah, and it protects the child
Mm-hmm.
from undergoing more psychological abuse.
Yep.
So, speaking about those 8 points, I read through them all, and are there any that you'd like to talk about or share with people that you're working on with those additional steps? Like I remember having cameras in the courtroom, for
Yep.
instance.
The first one I have, there's 8 of them, is a New Start equality. And that's a 50-50 presumption, ensures, prioritizes equal parenting time, promoting fairness in custody decisions. But when you do have that time, then you go to what's going to keep my time, and that's the time taken, time back. We've already went through that. Then you have the 3 strikes law that is interference with child custody, and that protects that. But then there's justice delayed, justice denied. And I guarantee you, all your people are like, yes. So even when you go in, I went in and got an enforcement issue. My judge didn't rule for like, it was going up on 6 months now after it took 3 or 4 months to get in there for an enforcement, and she still hadn't ruled. So I'm like, okay, I looked into the law, found out that judges don't have, there is no time to tell the judge that this is a set hard date. You have to rule, 10 days after, whatever. So I started thinking about it, and I came out with justice delayed is justice denied, and it requires judges to issue rulings within 10 days of a hearing, reducing unnecessary delays. Now, I went in front of the SEJC, which reprimands judges and lawyers, and I said this, yeah, what'd you have for lunch last Thursday? Do you know? Probably not. And you only have 3 meals in between those times. How is a judge going to give you your justice when they can't remember it? They can't. It's impossible. So I came out with the 10-day rule to make the judges at least rule within 10 business days. And I even put clauses in there. If there's a drug test, then it's 10 days after they receive that test back. And another clause that, okay, if they still need more time, they're going to have to write in the case why they need 10 more days. But at least now it's accountability for a judge to get that ruling out and keep that fresh in their mind why. Another one is cameras in the courtroom. That deals with that's a no-brainer. So if the judge is doing something crazy, they're not going to want someone to know about it. So cameras in the courtroom is going to stop that bad behavior. Same with you. You're not going to act bad knowing it's being recorded or saying that the judge did something when they didn't do it. So it protects judges and the litigants at the same time. There's another one with child support dual calculation in Texas. We're a little bit behind. It only takes one parent into account of what they make, but it doesn't take both. So like in my case, I make, let's just say $100,000 a year. My ex sold her company for 80 million. There's a big discrepancy there. So I'm paying child support to a multimillionaire. And so this takes in calculation to, and that's pretty extreme, right? So my situation is, but at least now if somebody makes 100,000 and the other one makes 100,000 and the kids at both homes, then they're in the same income bracket. They shouldn't either of them, take care of 50-50 medical bills, but not child support like that. The other thing is making temporary orders appealable. So if a judge hammers you in temporary orders, most people's temporary orders are their final orders because they don't have enough money to get into final trial, especially if they have to do home studies, psych evals, work, babysit, pay child support. Most people don't even make it to final trial. So they either mediate out or they just take their temporary orders as final orders and done. And then justice for targeted parents, and you'll like this one, reimbursement of fees and costs in cases involving parental alienating behavior, not parental alienation, parental alienating behavior. So if you withhold children, that's an alienating behavior. If you're gatekeeping, that's an alienating behavior. If you're bad-mouthing or brainwashing, that's an alienating behavior. At that point, the judge can order after that law goes into your state that that alienating parent pays all the fees. They pay your fees for your attorneys, the psych evals, the home studies, that whole gamut that you just made them run into because you were the cause of it.
Love it. Love it. Love all of it. So these initiatives, how do we have I know tons of people are going to watch this and want it in their state as soon as possible. How can people pass these other initiatives? Is that something you're working on currently?
Yes. So I've already had all these bills drafted for Texas and several other states. And I think Ohio what state are you in?
Utah.
Utah. So I think I may had one advocate reach out about Utah, but Ohio is taking all 8 bills right now. We have senators and House reps that want all 8. So each one of these will restore the family court. Everyone wants to see it burned down or whatever. That's never going to happen. It's too big of an industry. It's too big money. But every one of these would have saved the trouble of what most people went into. And with these little tweaks of these 8 bills in your state, even one at a time or whatever, will readjust family court. It'll make it run more efficient and with less trauma to parents. And I never would have had to come out with any of these bills or anything like this, or none of you all watching this would have ever had to have went through what you went through had family court been better and not so egregious to one parent.
Yes, it seems like these 8 initiatives and these bills give parents some options. They give parents some support, whereas before they were just totally powerless and helpless in this type of situation.
Correct. And
And
I'm just
also,
one person too. So I was just a parent, just like all your viewers. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but now after I passed this law, I'm teaching CLE classes, which is continuing law education for judges and lawyers. They invite me into their class along with other people, and I explained why I had to come out with these laws. Like you said, you had that question about the 60-day thing. So I can clarify any questions that these lawyers and judges have. And there's a lot of them in there. I think the first class I did that they invited me to, I was in front of 200 lawyers and judges explaining why this was needed and what was meant by it. That way they can issue that law correctly.
oh, I love that. I love that. You should come to Utah and talk to some judges in
I'll
Utah.
do it anytime you want.
So, on a bigger scale, I just have a few more questions for
Sure.
you. What is your bigger vision? Do you want to see these laws become national standards? Is that possible?
Yes. So I've talked to Ted Cruz and John Cornyn there are U.S. senators in Texas, and they said that if I can get this law passed or any of these laws in several states, that they will take it on a federal level. And they can because they violate your Fifth Amendment right for due process with these protective orders, restraining orders without due process, because someone just has to put an affidavit in family court and all of a sudden your time's taken away with a false allegation. So there's no due process. When these bills go through, it will right that wrong. And so, yeah, they're amazing bills. Senator Angela Paxton here in Texas has led a lot of these bills. And like I said, they're going through bipartisan, unanimous, and the first time. So they should do the same with your states.
Okay, so here's a good question. If you had a microphone to every family court judge or state legislator in America, what would you say?
That these bills are needed to protect our families and our children, and that you can't have a strong nation without having strong families. And every one of these bills will ensure that.
Perfectly said. You cut right to the heart of the matter. Yeah, I agree with you. Robert, you've already shared your website. Can you repeat that for people who want to become involved?
Sure. It's Robert Garza, GARZA.US.
.us.
And it's pretty neat. You go in there, you put your zip code in, and it specifically goes to your state to see if there's any bills in your state. And if not, just sign up to be an advocate and we'll reach out to you. The other way is Facebook. 100% go follow me on Facebook because I put everything there, even North Dakota. When we're having these bills and we're calling people to testify, you will get notified just by following that. So,
Awesome. So, lastly, just to wrap up and circle back to your own personal experience that you gave in your little elevator pitch at the beginning of the interview, how would these laws and these 8 initiatives have changed your own experience, and why do they matter for future generations?
wow. So I probably would have went through one or two false allegations, not 43. If that law becomes in your state, what it really does is it returns the resources back to CPS where they can investigate children really being hurt rather than these false allegations. Right now, all over the country, CPS findings of real allegations are only 15 to 18%. That shows you how rampant these false allegations are.
Wow.
That is a massive waste of resources. And if you want them to investigate children really being hurt, then these need to be in your state. because it will make those, I don't want to see them find children really being hurt, but at least now they can stop investigating these false allegations. But yes, it would have changed it massively because my children or I never would have went through this. And just so people know, I have joint custody of my kids. I've never lost custody. I still pick them up. I, take them to school, whatever. I have one that's aged out now, but I still have a 16-year-old, so.
So these are very powerful. And I love that they're actually actionable, that there are actionable steps people can take now, whereas before they were kind of left in a double bind.
Yeah, there was really no solution. When you go and talk to, it didn't matter who, your lawyer or judges or even your state legislators to try to get them to do something, they've never been through this. They don't know how to solve it. Any one of these 8 things is a solution to your problem. And the last 2 days ago, when we were testifying in our Capitol at the Senate in the Criminal Justice Committee, I had two lawyers that came to talk about this and say why it's needed, and then also a mental health professional that had several people behind her, um, professionals talking about why this is needed and how it will stop alienation at its core by keeping that parental bond with both parents.
It would have changed the course of my life if these bills had been in place. So thank you. I mean, I think this is going to help a lot of children as well, because as we know, it's not just about the rupture of that parent-child bond, but it's about all the internalization of the hatred and the anger and a bunch of really negative, self-destructive effects that play out in the child's life that this could prevent,
Yep.
including suicidality and self-harm and very, very serious symptoms.
Yeah, because when you separate a child from either parent, you put them at risk for alcoholism, teen pregnancy, high school dropout, suicide. You can stop this very quickly. And I found that with the time back in the three strikes law, this prevents a lot of that before it starts.
Yeah,
And so you don't have to have all these mental health professionals and everything else. It stops the bad behavior before it starts.
love it. Love it. I love all of it. I'm going to take it to Senator McKell in Utah. Um, so last question, Robert. What legacy do you hope to leave for your children and for every parent and child fighting to be heard?
I hope all these bills go in every state.
Mhm.
And my hope is that they solve the issues at the core and that parental alienation was just this thing that family court did, whether it was on purpose or not on purpose, but it was happening and it's solved now. And that no more children have to suffer, and it's generational change when one goes through it. So I'm hoping that even if something happens to me today, what I've left right now with those 8 solutions, I think that people can take those and run with them, and it will solve this issue that everyone's having, and hopefully we'll have a better society for it.
Wow. Well, what you've done is incredible. I think your kids, if they're not already thanking you for it, will one day realize the impact that you've had. And I just really respect and admire what you've done with your pain. I mean, a lot of people struggle to even move forward at all. And you decided to make a difference. It really only takes one person, as you can see.
It
So,
does.
is there anything you would like to add before we conclude our interview?
Follow me on Facebook. Stay strong. I know what it feels like to be, in what you're dealing with the alienation and everything else. I went through some of that. We did get separated and for a while and stuff like that. So just know that I was you in whatever stage that you're in, and there is light at the outside of that dark tunnel. And just keep your head up and stay focused and just live day to day. Surround yourself with family and friends, and go to church. Find a big group there to be around and you'll be okay.
That's great advice. So everybody listening, please go to Robert Garza's website, read the bills, send them to your state rep or your senator. Um, Share if you enjoy this episode or think it's very important, please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And thank you so much for being here and sharing all of this with us today, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Like, share, and subscribe to Maddie and the Anti-Parental Alienation Project, and donate to her, because if not, you would never have heard this message.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hopefully we can meet again in the future and talk about all the work that you've done in the meantime, because
I
you're
will
on a
see you in
roll.
your state.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert.